Hey guys, welcome to week 3. Today we are talking about research. I want to begin with some very important details about the questionnaire. I know some of you have sent out emails to the class, including your link. I appreciate that, but as per the lecture, the mini lecture last week, week 2, I was saying that what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to collect the links to all your research surveys and put them in Blackboard under questionnaires. So what you need to do is not email the class the link. You need to email me the link, and then I'm going to aggregate them on Blackboard under the heading questionnaires, and I'm going to list them 1 through 18. So you're right, there are only 18 students, not 20. A couple of people dropped. So I'm going to list them 1 through 18 and just keep track of the ones that you're doing. So for those of you who haven't sent me the link yet, send me the link. Make sure there is a question on there or space for students to input their student ID, because here's what's going to happen. So by the end of today, I hope to have all the links aggregated there on Blackboard under questionnaires. And then throughout the week, you will plug away at them, keep tabs of which ones you've done and which ones you haven't. And then at the end of the week, I need you to, in SurveyMonkey, you can download your report. It's kind of like a report, like you want to close the survey and then download a report. It's a PDF document that aggregates all the questions and the data. You're going to download that at the end of the week, so Saturday at midnight, and then upload it to the Dropbox that's called primary research responses. So before I said there's going to be no file to upload there, but that's where you're going to download the final report. So I know this is kind of a bit confusing, and we're going to aggregate the links there. Make sure you do all 18 of them. As long as you put in your university ID number, you're going to get credit for it eventually. So do all 18, take your time, give good responses, give the type of responses that you would want them to give to you, because if you just give 1 or 2 word or even 1 sentence responses, it's not really going to help the research process. So I'm kind of trusting that you guys will give substantive responses. And then I'll see what it'll do when you download the report and you upload it. I'll see a list of all the student IDs who have taken your survey. So it's going to be a lot of tedious work on my part, because I'm going to have to go through each report and check which student IDs have done it. So I'm going to make sure that all 18 of you have done 18 for whatever number that is. So at the end of the week, I'll send a reminder near the end of the week for you to download your reports and then upload them to the Dropbox so I can access to them. Because if I don't see the answers to your surveys, then I'm not going to know who gets points. So if you don't upload that, you're going to get a 0 on that as well. So you have to make sure to upload the report from SurveyMonkey to the appropriate Dropbox and Blackboard, or else you'll get 0 on that. And I'll send another email clarifying that near the end of the week. So what's due this week? Complete all the surveys, like I just said, but then you also have to do background research. So kind of what we're talking about is primary and secondary research there. So the surveys are a form of primary research in the sense that you have one-to-one correspondence with the actual people giving you the data. That's why it's primary research, because there's no mediary. You're not looking at someone else's questionnaire of the data. You're doing it yourself. And one of the things I wanted to have you guys do this summer is to engage in both primary and secondary research. So you are doing primary research, pretty surface level because it is a questionnaire, but questionnaires are used quite often, and the data is taken very seriously if the questionnaires are done right enough, if they have big enough sample size, and if the questions are strong enough. So obviously this is more modest. There's 18 total and only 7 questions, but it's enough to help guide us, the English department, myself, in moving forward. So it's enough responses for that. There is no ideal sample size. There are ideal sample sizes for specific purposes, and I think close to 20 is pretty strong. You usually want 40 or 50, but given the constraints of our class, it should work just fine. And then the secondary research you'll be doing this week, which is going to be your primary responsibility, is to accumulate 5 sources, 3 academic, 2 non-academic. And you're going to summarize them and make connections between all of them in what's called an annotated bibliography. So let me briefly discuss this, because I know that this is going to be probably a point of clarification throughout the week. So it's going to be a memo format. So you're going to find 5 sources, essentially, and I'm going to talk about where to find them in a second. You're going to find 5 sources. You're going to cite them in MLA or APA format. You're going to have a citation, and then directly underneath, you're going to have a 200-word paragraph. In that paragraph, I'm expecting you to briefly summarize the source and make connections to the other sources. So all 5 sources shouldn't be orphaned from each other. They should all be connected. So when you're summarizing one source, you should say how it complements or contradicts or challenges the other source. And that's very useful because finding sources and summarizing them on their own is fine, but the next level of critical thinking, the next level of research integration is making sense of the variety of sources and putting them into conversation with each other. So that's what I'll be looking for specifically in your background research, which is what it's called. So if you've done an annotated bibliography, it resembles very much that. I'm calling it background research because this is technical writing and not literature, but it's the same kind of idea. So where are you going to find these sources? Well, obviously, given a 6-week class, we can't really go too much in depth into research methods. So I wanted to kind of go over a few just to get you kind of started here. So there are multiple ways. So let's start with this one. So if you go to the ODU website, odu.edu/library, it'll take you to a page where there's a variety of things that you could do. You can look for books in ODU library, our ODU only catalog. You can look at WorldCat, which is books anywhere, and you can get it through interlibrary loan. You can also look at journals and databases. And the difference between that is a journal, the A through Z journals, if you know the specific journal that you want to go to, like Technical Communication Quarterly or Business Quarterly or whatever journal you're looking at, then you can go there. The databases A through Z is if you just want general topics, and then it'll search all the journals in that topic, like African American literature or women's literature or 18th century British literature or whatever it is. You can search by topic. So a good place for you to start is go to the ODU site, go to databases A through Z, go there, and in the search bar type in IEEE Explore. So IEEE XPLORE, and those are 2 separate words. That is one of the main databases that people in technical communication use. And then once you're in there, you can use search terms that you think would help get you the answers, whether you want to say Bachelor of Science or Students Technology. There are going to be tens of thousands of results, so you want to kind of use the search terms that are most relevant for your research project. And then that'll help you get some academic sources. There'll be journals, they'll be peer-reviewed, because you're going through the in the journals and in the academic processes of peer review. Another way you can do that is to use Google Scholar, and this is a smart way to do it. If you use Google Scholar, so you could just go scholar.google.com, or you can choose Scholar at the top, like web, images, video, Scholar. And use the search terms there. What it'll do is it'll give you a series of sources, but oftentimes Google won't provide you access to those journal articles. It'll just tell you where they are. So this is kind of like a reverse engineering. So you try and find an article. Let's say it's Technical Communication Quarterly, issue 19, or volume 19, issue 3. And you're like, okay, great. But Google Scholar doesn't give you access to that because they're behind paywalls. A lot of journals are behind paywalls. A lot of the good academic stuff are. So now that you know what journal it is, now you can go to the ODU website and go journals A through Z and look up Technical Communication Quarterly, which we have access to, and then choose 19.3 and then go from there. So rather than start with all these huge journals, you use Google to help you find and locate, because every single citation will be on Google somewhere, and then you find the information, what journal, what volume, and issue number, and then you go to ODU website and access it there, because as a student, you have access to all these paywalls, to get behind all these paywalls, and that's the beauty of it. So those are 2 ways you can find academic sources in technical communication that you'll find useful. For non-academic sources, honestly, you're going to use Google, and here's a chance for you to find sources and select sources based upon your gut. We all have varying degrees of savviness when it comes to trying to identify what's reliable information and what's not. But, this is a 3rd-year class, so we should kind of be thinking about, what organization is putting this publication out, who's writing it. Are they writing for an established organization, like a newspaper, for example? Like a newspaper article would be a non-academic source. Chronicle of Higher Education is a good online news source. Washington Post, New York Times, they have things like that. And you can just access that all through Google. So the vastness of Google has kind of helped academic researchers because it's a good starting point to at least find stuff. And then you can dig deeper once you find your location. So think about who's the author, is the information presented fairly? I mean, we're not really doing extremely contentious topics here. So the political slant might not be necessarily a problem here, as if if we were doing something a bit more controversial, it might be. So just use Google. So by non-academic, that doesn't mean non-credible, right? There are still non-academic credible sources. So academic sources that it goes through peer review and that it typically appears in a periodical or journal that's published consecutively and is run by academics. A non-academic source just means it doesn't have to go through peer review, but it's still credible. So all your sources have to be credible. That goes without saying. But the way you judge the credibility of a non-academic source is a bit different. Because, well, look to the bottom, look at who's publishing it, when did it come out, research the organization. If it's with the Institute of whatever, Institute of Technical Writing, look up that organization and see what they're all about, and use your judgment, your own personal judgment, and the credibility of sources, because the sources you choose to put in a paper or a report reflect very much yourself. So if you put a poor, politically slanted or not well-researched article into your report, then that reflects very poorly on you. So in a way, you have a relationship with your sources. So the more credible your sources are, the more credible you'll seem. And I know that seems maybe pretty elementary to say, but I think a lot of people forget that sometimes, that they are attached at the hip to their research and their sources. So because part of the progress report and final report is you making yourself seem reliable and academic and credible, you want to make sure your sources are that way as well. So those are just some kind of tips that you can use moving forward in terms of research. If you have an article and you're not really sure about it, you want to email me and say, Dr. Richards, I think this is credible. I think they present the research fairly. I think they present the idea fairly, but I'm not sure. Let's have a conversation about this. I'd be more than open to that. I know, lastly, I'll address, there's probably some anxiety in terms of how can we find research on such obscure topics that are relevant to our specific Old Dominion context. And that is true. We are very specific Old Dominion context, but the conversations that we're having at Old Dominion are not exclusive to Old Dominion. So student use of technology, people have been talking about that forever. People have been railing against, second graders having iPads in classrooms or mandating laptops for freshmen in certain universities. So students use technology, and this is a larger conversation across the states and across the world. So it might seem like these issues are specific to Old Dominion. They're not. You're conducting service for Old Dominion, but these are larger conversations. So think broadly about the research. If you're having trouble finding something that's really relevant to your report, take a step back and think, well, what's really the issue here? Student use of technology, trying to convince someone that English can be a science, the scientific nature of English. There are a variety of ways to kind of step above and get a top view of the real issues. So let me know if you have any questions. Be sure to send me an email with your questionnaire link so that people can read it. And I will post it to Blackboard. And I will see you guys next week.